that's where
you put $100 million in there, you're hitting the story about Texas, that it's like perennially a state that Democrats could win,
right,
is very much, I think, a consultant grift.
Oh, I think you're probably right.
Because the huge media markets, and that's like there's a big markup. The way that, should just be clear on this, the way that media consultants work is they go out, they buy the media for you, local advertisements, radio, but mostly TV, and they get a markup.
Yeah.
It's like 10%. I mean, it's almost like the same scam as the private health insurance, where it's like we're capped at 20% profits.
But
so okay, guess what, hospital? Jack up the prices.
Yeah, exactly.
And our 20%
gets a lot
gets
higher.
a lot bigger.
Yeah.
It's just math, man.
The right, like Bloomberg as a person who has been grifted is like probably an underrated storyline, but because like everyone he hired only knows how to do one kind of campaigning, and they did it.
I mean, it's kind of like Parasite. He has so much money that they barely even recognize.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, like that's not a spoiler. Really? Anyway, but like he has so much money, like grifting him, like he doesn't even notice. He doesn't care. It's like
right. I think that's true.
And when you're that sheltered and in a bubble,
we can't hear you. You're not on mic.
Oh God, you guys are running.
Are we
Are we on a break? No, I was wasting all that gold.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you guys for hanging in.
We're not on a break. We're live.
Oh, we're live right now?
Yes.
Are we?
Are we? The YouTube live. We've been live on everything else.
Oh.
All right.
Well, there
If
we
you're
go.
just joining us,
We're having a little bit of communication issues. We'll start right back up.
I think I changed the wrong name. Maybe not.
You got the name right. It says part 2 live.
Okay, I changed it once before I did.
All right, yeah.
Okay, so let's just start this. I've got an ad too, right? We got Capterra today. This is going to be Wednesday's program, so why don't we just give us the intro?
Viability here, Warren, 13%. So
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought.
This is continuing special coverage of Super Tuesday into Super Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. Not so Super Wednesday. This is obviously the Majority Report. Many of you will be hearing this on Wednesday, March 4th. We are doing a recap of Super Tuesday as of 11:10 p.m. Eastern. The results are in for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the, 14 states?
and American Samoa.
And American Samoa. Can we just all agree, like, we're not going to pay attention to American Samoa? Sorry. It was like 600 people who voted there.
Erasure.
So 9 of the states are in. The 2 biggest states are Texas and California. They have not been called. They will be called. Let's listen to Massachusetts here because I'm curious as what's going on in Worcester. Now, Joe Biden appears to be...
second at 26.5. Again, round up to 27. This has to be the shock of the night. Elizabeth Warren running third.
I got to tell you, not a huge shock to me.
I'm shocked she did that well, to be honest.
She will get delegates.
I'm here with Alex Pareene, Brandon Sutton, obviously Jamie and Matt and Brendan are here as well. So basically, where we're at this point, there are still 5 states extant. Biden leads in 2, Sanders leads in 2. I think that, and there's a projection here as we speak. Sanders has just won Utah. We completely mystified by what goes on.
We don't know.
In
Yeah,
Utah.
we don't
Why
have any.
Utah is so specifically Bernie friendly.
I think it's a ray gun.
But so Colorado, Utah, Vermont, Sanders has won at this point. For Biden, Alabama, Arkansas, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Virginia. So let's turn that down unless there's any new news. We still have Texas. We still have California extant. I think it's a safe bet that Sanders is going to win California, but we're not going to really
We won't know for a long
know the
time.
extent for a long time. We're talking like
Weeks, like literally weeks.
Weeks.
For the final number. I think we'll have a better sense of, by tomorrow and the next day we'll have a better sense of sort of what the broad numbers are, but we won't know final numbers for weeks.
So overall, I think we can say this has been a disappointing night for Sanders. That Biden has, there's a lot of people who seem to have, decided very late, and that they decided they went with Biden based upon sort of the momentum and the notion. Sanders has now been projected to win the California Democratic primary. So, I mean, I think that was, we saw some of the exit polling, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I think there's the big story coming out of this. Well, there's 3 big stories, I think.
Yeah.
And you guys weigh in on this. One is Biden obviously surging and gaining the confidence that he can beat Trump from a lot of the voters. The other is, what's Elizabeth Warren going to do? Because she has the ability to change the tenor of the race, I think, to the extent that anything can before the next debate. And frankly, we got 10 states before the next debate. So something has to happen between now and next Tuesday. And then the third thing, which I think people are going to hear about quite a bit, is if California is any measure, and we see this in Texas and Colorado, because we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen any exit polling for Colorado. Maybe we can look for that, guys. Sanders could be dominating in a sort of a unique way with Hispanic Latino voters. Just to give you a sense of what we're talking about in California. Hold on now. We got a projection here.
Massachusetts. We already had that one, didn't we?
So
CNN's being a little more cautious than AP, it sounds like.
Yeah. Biden has won Massachusetts as well. So that's he wins 8. Now, we don't know the delegate splits here.
Right. I think,
and that's, I don't think the delegate splits are going to be as dramatic as the numbers we're looking at, but, it's hard to say. And so much of this is about a narrative. But, if I was, I'd be curious right now what Trade Sports says about a brokered convention.
I think it's important that, it's important to say that Biden won the narrative tonight, even if by the time all the votes are counted, the delegate difference is very small, because the reason he won the narrative tonight and did so well is because he won the narrative over the last few days.
Yeah.
This is a
continuation.
This is a response. This is a continuation of a story that was created over the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also, to just piggyback that, in my mind, what's going to be the big story tomorrow is Biden sweeps the, Super Tuesday results, gets all these states, but also, Biden proves that once you move out of the all-white states, once you move, the all-white states, he dominates, right? Once you start getting in African-American voters, because they're going to try to reduce down people of color down to African-American older voters in the South and try to do their best to sweep the, basically Sanders dominating the Latino vote in Nevada, in California, and most likely Texas to portray Biden as this candidate who it has this diverse coalition that everyone is coming towards, right? So I think it's going to be key, at least from Sanders' perspective, to highlight the fact that yes, Biden is dominating a very specific subpopulation of black people in the South who are more ingratiated with the Obama world, with the establishment, but Sanders is building this more burgeoning coalition of Latino voters, younger black voters who otherwise would not be voting in the primary or general election at all. And so like that needs to be the kind of story that Sanders' campaign is working from. That, hey, yeah, I mean, not to be rude, but certain votes, as Pete Buttigieg did with his imaginary black supporters, like can be taken a little bit for granted. Like, hey, the older black votes, they're going to come out for Dems. Unfortunate, but true. The people who we need to be focusing on are the Latino voters, coalescing them around Sanders, the younger black voters who otherwise would stay home. And so like his surges there are very important.
The low propensity voters.
Well, so I would say that what you're going to hear is that because youth turnout was so low, Sanders once again showed he can't bring these people out consistently. Yeah. But you're talking about bringing them out to defeat Joe Biden versus bringing them out to defeat Donald Trump. Like, people who are highly invested like we are want to defeat Joe Biden.
Right.
I mean, these people are like, they're like, oh, I like Sanders the best. Biden seems fine. I would go out to, I really don't think turnout can even be compared from a primary to a general.
It's very hard to break this stuff out. I mean, we have some areas where the turnout has been enormous. What state was it that
Virginia?
Virginia, yeah. The turnout was enormous,
almost double what it was.
And so there's a lack of data on this. Yeah. I think that is there. Like, it's unclear who is coming out and who's not coming out. And it would make sense to me, just based upon canvassing in Massachusetts and just sort of just conversations across the country that I've had with people. They want Trump out.
Yeah.
And they're not as invested. There's a certain group of people, I don't know who they are, that are just not as invested in which Democrat it is. I think that's what happened with Biden. It was just I'm being told to vote
I'm
for
being
Biden.
told this is the one.
Boom.
Well, they don't perceive a policy difference between Democrats sometimes because, like what Brandon was saying, they don't see how it affects their lives. They're like, Democrat's a Democrat, They maybe haven't dug that deep into what Bernie Sanders stands for. Or maybe I'm wrong. Who knows?
So 2 points. First, I'll be interested to see how youth voter turnout actually pans out once all the votes are counted. Because in the beginning, it was very much like, oh, yeah, the youth turnout is not happening. But then we're hearing, people are waiting in line 3 hours, 2 hours to vote.
In certain places, yeah.
So youth vote turnout was an early narrative that they tried to push, I think, to, make Biden's win seem a lot more grandiose than it's going to turn out to be in the end. Not say he won't win these 9 states still, but I think the margins, especially as the youth vote comes in, people leaving school, showing up late, waiting in line from 7 to 10, are going to do better. And second, to Jamie's point, I don't know. I mean, not to contradict myself, but I think that it's true that there are very little substantial difference between Democrats, and a lot of parties sort of feels that way, like any blue will do. But I also think that the opposite is true too, that when you have two candidates like Buttigieg and Klobuchar coalesce around one candidate, it gives the illusion that they are that if there was diversity amongst these three people, that it can be assuaged by putting one person in.
I mean, look, it's a natural human reaction to see everybody's hanging out with that dude.
Everyone's coming around.
Right.
Yeah.
Now give me 1 second here because a message from our sponsor. I've talked about Capterra quite a bit. This site is actually pretty fun. I don't know, Alex, if you've or Brandon. Brandon, you seem to be pretty happy with your career. For me, I've constantly wishing that if I knew how to do anything else. And the thing about Capterra, it's a site where they have aggregated 700 categories of software for 700 different businesses. And then they have 25 pieces of software for each one of these businesses. And it's Capterra. It's a website that millions of people use on a monthly basis to find this software. It gives you the opportunity to sort of filter by price and by features. You compare the top options side by side. There's millions of reviews. It's totally free. Like I say, 700 specific categories of software. from like things that I didn't even know were businesses. Like, like dog walking software, like, prison management software. I mean, that's not necessarily, but there's all sorts of just it's stunning. Like I just sometimes browse through it just to think like, hey, that's a business I could do or something like that. There's over 1 million reviews of the products.
Would like to browse
Honestly, it's sort of fun. It's completely free. And no matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy for you to find the right solution fast. And like I say, there's solutions there that you may not even realize about that exist for problems that you have. So check out Capterra. You can visit capterra.com/majority for free today. Find the right software choice for your business. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra. That's CAPTERRA.com/majority. Capterra, software selection simplified. Check it out. Honestly, folks, it's fun. It's a parlor game for me. Like they had like instant messaging stuff. Anyways. All right. So back to the point, like Biden's back in it. He may be at the end of the day in the lead in terms of delegates. He may not be. And the end of the day is sort of how you define that.
Yeah.
Right. Like we could be talking by Friday, maybe Sanders overtakes the lead. California's just really slow.
It's really slow to count,
but I think it's clear that every dream that the Biden people had in terms of what the narrative would be after Super Tuesday relative to what it was 4 days ago has been largely fulfilled.
I would like to, if you don't mind, pivot to Warren, the Warren part of this thing, because from my perspective, like these results, fourth in most states, third in a few, signals her campaign is just absolutely in free fall. And for me, the longer she stays in the race, the less leverage she has with whatever candidate she's going to be negotiating with when she drops out. The best time for her to drop out would have probably been right after New Hampshire. She was still riding high. She could have made the argument that, hey, if we, pulling me into the Sanders coalition, like it will guarantee that that doesn't happen. Essentially, that Super Tuesday doesn't happen. But her results on Super Tuesday in a lot of these states, a lot of these key states, weren't really that. The argument that she is a necessary component to the Bernie Sanders movement victory, I think becomes a waning prospect the longer she stays in this race and the more she loses supporters organically.
Yeah. So on that topic, people have been asking me, and we've been discussing, would it maybe be more helpful if Warren stays in until the convention so she can give her delegates to Bernie? And I think one thing that's certainly been hammered home to me tonight is the importance of the narrative and the narrative at any given moment in time. So given that fact, it would make way more sense for her to drop out early on, because that's when the momentum and the narrative is really going to matter for Bernie. If she waits until the convention to try to help him out, it could be over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. This is I guess an email that Warren sent out as a grassroots supporter. You're at the heart of this movement. We want to give you an update on what's happening with Super Tuesday. 14 states devoted today. Results are still coming in from across the country. In fact, we may not know the full results from Texas, California, and Colorado for a few days. I don't know when this was put out, but Colorado's already been called. Delegates have to be counted and allocated by congressional district or state Senate district.
You're talking about allocation, which could take a few days to figure out.
Oh, I see. Okay. But here's the bottom line. There are 6 more primaries just 1 week away, and we need your help to keep up the momentum. Seriously?
Strong third.
I mean, Pete was sending these out hours before he quit.
That's right.
Hours before he quit, Pete was sending these out.
Right. And in some respects, it's like, we may have a couple of bills we got to take care of before we exit the race.
Seriously.
But from my perspective, we are at the peak leverage that Warren could, or even look, we can look back 3 or 4 days ago. I don't think it would have been in her best interest to have left the race 3 or 4 days ago, because it didn't necessarily look like it would have the same value.
Yeah.
But there is no doubt that the peak value to Warren, right? Let's assume for a moment that all politicians function in what their best interest is, which I think is like a fairly safe place to be.
Yeah.
Her peak value, it seems to me, is between today and Tuesday for Bernie Sanders there is no path for her to win at this point. And she could go and endorse Biden, but what's the value to Biden?
She can't bring anything to Biden.
She can't bring anything to Biden at this point.
And also, just from that perspective, like for her to endorse Biden, I think would be such a mask off moment for like what she's actually about, because she can't possibly think that people think she can work within the Biden administration.
Right.
Like for anything that even let's say whatever else she's gone on about for this election, I believe that she has a narrow stretch of expertise that she's interested in enacting when it comes to financial and banking reform. Like she can't possibly believe that she can get that done with Biden, a coalition with Biden. So for her to align with Biden, forget not endorsing anybody, would be like such a heel turn that like just goes against what I would argue her entire career has been theoretically about. That it would be shocking to a degree that I don't think is possible. Yeah. But at the same time, she's only making like her career and her goals more and more unattainable for herself the longer she stays in this race, and the longer she decides to keep the necessary coalition with her and the Bernie Sanders administration like off the table.
She's being taken for a ride by these consultants, like you were saying, Brandon.
I mean, I think we need to decide, see this week. I mean, I'm
curious.
I think. Like I say, I don't know that her dropping out Wednesday is better than her dropping out Thursday. Personally, if it was up to me, if I was on the Sanders campaign and the Warren people called me and said, let's talk, my first reaction would be, I want to wait and see what Bloomberg does, because what I don't want is Warren to endorse Bernie
and then
Wednesday and then Bloomberg on Thursday step on the story. I want Bloomberg to endorse Biden, and then I want Warren to come in and shift because I want the momentum going into next Tuesday. And so I'm thinking if I'm the Sanders campaign and Warren calls, or we call Warren and we talk, I would say like Thursday, Friday, maybe even Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I don't think that, although the other side of that, Bloomberg has so much money that he could just stay in past. He could stay in. I mean, he probably won't, but he could stay in as long as he.
I don't
really
think
wants
there's any reason to anymore.
There's no reason to, exactly. But I mean, this particular letter doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, it could just be signaling to the Sanders campaign that, hey, you know what, I'm willing to stay in this until the end if you don't give me what I want.
Well,
if you don't give me what I want.
But the thing is like
exactly.
I believe that leak that they were looking into, could she be his treasurer and secretary treasury and vice president? I just don't think that
assuming good faith on her part, I think it would be very good for her to be freed from her campaign.
Yeah. Yep.
And
you should send her some help.
And the best case scenario for her at this point, is she is the happy face of the Sanders campaign, the happy, competent face that reassures the liberals that he will be someone they can vote for.
Yeah.
And then Sanders wins presidency and she gets whatever. That's the best case scenario for her.
Yeah.
And I think if she is being realistic about her chances, then she will see that.
Another thing about this that I just realized, we'd been bandying about names of people that maybe Bernie would announce as his VP pick, right? If you were going to do that.
I don't think that seems like a desperation play.
And what I'm saying is, as long as Warren is still in play, he can't draft Ayanna Pressley. Right?
What do you mean?
Because she's like one of the most prominent surrogates.
Yeah, I don't think Sanders is going to announce his VP.
No?
No. I just don't.
That's not a thing that is usually done this early.
I don't think that Sanders, I think there was some rumor that he was going to do it after Super Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw a rumor.
I think that's, well, first off, I guess I can imagine it in the context of like, if you did really well at Super Tuesday,
then
you announce it like, hey, it's over.
It's over. I won.
I'm won. And so now,
ladies and gentlemen, Dick Gephardt.
We're starting the general election today. But if you do it after you've lost, it looks like
it looks like Carly Fiorina.
Exactly. It looks like a gimmick. But next week, a week from today, Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, and Washington. Look, Michigan is hugely important.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why Bloomberg drops out, I think. Because Bloomberg has invested heavily in Michigan, I believe. And because this is, I think they saw that, Michigan is very important.
Yeah.
To Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I think so.
It was the one that changed the tenor of the race last time in 2016, where all of a sudden, like, he could win, or he created the sense that he could. I don't think he could at that point, but and it is obviously a state that Hillary Clinton should have won, and it is this is one that Bernie has to win. And I think Bloomberg does not want to split Joe Biden's vote there.
Yeah.
And that's a reason enough
Bloomberg
for him
leaves,
to get out. So, I think the next couple of days is, Warren has to step up. I just don't understand why she wouldn't do that, but who knows?
Yeah.
We've now covered like the two big stories, I think, and there's one more story that could come out of this in terms of a narrative. We've heard Joe Biden, obviously the narrative is going to be the combat geriatric and
Pet cemeteried him.
Right. And Warren, what will she do? And the third potential narrative that I think we're going to hear a lot about, or we should, is indicated, and we need to see more numbers, but in California, 28% of the vote was Hispanic. And Bernie Sanders won that by 55% to 21%. Biden got 21%. He got 55% of the Hispanic vote. He got 72% of the 18 to 29 vote. There was only represented 14% of the electorate. And in terms of like the over 45, Biden won 37 to 18%. So not nearly as dramatic as 72 to 5%. Let me make that clear. Joe Biden won 5% of the 18 to 29 vote. Now, I will tell you this right now. Anybody who's gone out canvassing, it is disproportionate, the number of 18 to 29-year-olds who are walking around. I mean, and one of the problems that Hillary Clinton had, that they tried to spin into like we're creating new grounds, we're running a new type of campaign, is they did not have volunteers.
Yeah.
And therefore they said, like, what we're doing is we have an algorithm that's going to predict how we're going to do in these places. So we don't need a typical field campaign. And the problem was, we heard from like Mike from PA called in the day after the election, or the day of the day after the election, said, we were doing get out the vote in Pennsylvania. 25% of the doors we were knocking on were Trump voters. And that's because they did not send people out in the weeks prior.
Yeah.
They just sort of did a model as to who should be
They did a model. They didn't send out. They didn't get the list.
And so they didn't know that 1/4 of the people that they were driving to the polls was their opponent. Yeah. So never mind that it took extra time. So, and I just don't see Joe Biden.
Joe Biden's going to have to. I mean, he just did this well on Super Tuesday with having one Virginia field office and having basically a skeleton, like a campaign that barely exists physically.
And they're going to try to spin that to make it look like there's this popular upswell of enthusiasm about Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, that's the weird part about it, because even going back to the voter turnout amongst young people from earlier, like there was like this weird gloating subtext, like, oh, like what happened to Bernie's youth vote? Like that's bad. It's bad that the youth are not coming out to vote in your primary. It's bad that the 18 to 29 people theoretically are not feeling engaged in your primary process, because that will translate to like the general election theoretically. So I mean, I think the Democratic Party subscribes to bad habits during the primary that they just hope will that they can just reset the clock once it's general election time. It's like, well, no, if people aren't engaged with the primary,
you are exactly right, and I think it's the idea that they can just hit a reset button in the general election, because I think when you look at those staggering youth numbers. Yeah. when what some people saw as a sign that everyone should get on the same page and vote for Joe Biden, other people, I think, who are younger and have been actually wanting to care about this saw as something entirely different.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that also has a possibility. Sorry to interrupt, but the possibility these results right here have the possibility to actually mobilize a lot of Sanders support among the young. You know, like Sanders already has a huge grassroots organizing campaign, and the people who were on the fence about coming out, like I say, you know what, he's doing well already. It seems like he's going to win a lot of polls. They're going to be mobilized by this. So, like, I think the next 6 states, depending on what Warren decides to do, we might see a little bit of upswing there anyway, just in terms of people feeling more impetus to actually get out and turn out to vote.
The real concern I have about the general election, because as much as I have problems with Joe Biden, and as much as I think that 4 years of Joe Biden will bring us a more virulent Tom Cotton, I don't think that there is value in trying to play 8-dimensional chess with this type of stuff. Like, you go and you solve as many problems as you can in the most immediate fashion you can. Mm-hmm. But my fear of Joe Biden in the general election is that the people that you're talking about, like, we have two, people talk about this in terms of like moderate and radical lanes or whatever it is. There's also another way to look at it, and that is the lane of people who just want the person who is going to beat Trump, and they look for different cues as to where that happens. And then the other lane are people who are like invested in what the next president is going to do besides not being Trump.
Yeah.
And the problem with the first cohort deciding who's going to be president is that, again, they're the high propensity voters.
They're the ones who are going to turn out.
They're going to turn out anyways. And you have basically abandoned the people who have a different sense of what's going on. Now, you can judge those people. I personally do not. I actually judge them more favorably than the latter. But I'm saying, this is a message that I would give to, like, I'm preparing for what I'm going to say in, an hour on MSNBC, which is you can judge those people.
Are you going on MSNBC at like 12:30?
I'm going on at 1 a.m.
At 1 a.m.? They're all going to be delirious.
You can judge those people, but they exist. They are real. Mm-hmm. They are integral to making sure that Donald Trump is not elected. And so, ignoring that calculation, we do so at our peril.
Well, I mean, you can judge those people, the latter category, who just simply won't come out to vote if it's not Bernie or not somebody who's offering policies that affect them materially. But you know what? It doesn't matter if you judge them, because they're not operating in the same spaces where they're going to hear you judging them. It's just like the whole Bernie or bust thing is interesting and it's real, and it's like, it may not be like a coordinated movement. It may just be a sentiment amongst people. But like, the people who focus on it are focusing on like the people on Twitter and the people who are engaged in the political sphere in that way, who they feel who are their foils. Right. The real people who are real people they know who are in danger of not showing up to vote are the people who just aren't on Twitter. They're not watching MSNBC. They're not reading. Right. They're not reading these articles. And so you can yell about the Bernie or bust people. It's not about Bernie or bust people who are actively making.
They can't hear you.
They can't hear you.
It'll make you feel better, but it won't they will never hear that. They will never hear you complain about them. They will never hear that they're responsible for Trump. They will never hear those things, because they're just not part of that insulated bubble.
Yeah, they don't self-identify that way.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's not even right.
When we talk about Bernie or bust, the vast majority of people who aren't showing up, like, people act like it's just a conspiracy on the part of people who listen to Chapo Trap House or whatever. That is a vanishingly small proportion of the electorate.
Right. The people who are actually like Bernie and bust, they've never heard the term.
They've never heard that term, yeah.
Bernie or bust.
They don't even think in those terms.
So let's see. Almost 3 in 10 Democratic primary voters in Super Tuesday states decided who to vote for in the last few days. This according to early results from NBC exit polls in 12 states. That I think, is consistent not only with voting with Biden, but also consistent with the idea of, like, somebody tell me who's going to win.
Someone tell me who the hell to pick. Yeah.
10% of Democratic voters said that they made their decisions on Tuesday. Another 19% deciding over the past few days. 26% said they made their decisions in the last month. 43% made their minds up before then. That is the percentage you got to worry about, because those are the ones who are actually making an assessment about what these candidates are going to do as president. Early exit poll results shows that those late deciding voters broke decisively for Joe Biden. 40% decided in the last few days chose Biden.
It's just a weird dynamic. Just going back to the two pools of voters you talked about, where you have the people who are going to vote no matter what Democratic candidate that we put in front of them, no shade, and people who are actively making that decision. It's like letting the person who doesn't care what topping you get on your pizza choose what topping you get. Which is an analogy. What one of my co-hosts made, and I'm stealing it. It's like letting somebody who does not care who is going to like what the topping on the pizza when you have a vegetarian in the crowd, and then choosing pepperoni, and then going like, okay, well that person can just pick off the pepperoni or whatever, and that person's also paying. That person's also paying for the pizza. And so so it's hard to not to fall back on an argument like, okay, well if it doesn't matter to you, if it really just does not matter to you, why do you even care? It's just like, if you're going to be like, if it's just about like, hey, I want to vote for a Democrat, then we could skip all the fanfare and let the people who are actually engaged in the process decide. Of course, that violates the spirit of the whole process.
Slightly. Or we could just do property owners.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, it was definitely not New York Times columnist.
We should all just get together. Like, what do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? Oh, you seem like you care more. Let me let you decide.
It's just, I mean, like, obviously it's not the way things work. It's just a little frustrating sometimes.
Kind of how it works at caucuses.
I mean, it's a little frustrating sometimes where you're like, okay, but like you really don't seem like to care about this to the degree that the people you're yelling against.
Yeah,
democracy.
Anecdotally, like they were reporting on the caucuses. I think it was on Chapo. And they were like, okay, the Klobuchar people and the Buttigieg people, when their candidate lost and they had to realign, they were like crying. When the Biden people, when Biden didn't meet the threshold, they were like, okay.
I get to go home.
Yeah.
Are we leaving anything on the table? Brendan, is there any new late breaking news that we should be aware of? Okay. All right. So folks, here's the deal. We'll probably put this back up as public tomorrow at noon or something like that. We'll take it unlisted and then we'll take it public. And I will hop on YouTube and also post it to our stream. I'm going to do like a little bit of a not dirty, but you know what I mean? Like a
dirty and bust.
Yeah, no, like not an inappropriate thing. I'm saying like I'm going to just do a recap of stuff tomorrow morning to see where we are. I suspect it's not going to change too much, but who knows? Maybe I'll get into some type of fisticuffs at MSNBC tonight at 1 a.m. Let's see. Maybe I'll run into Chris Matthews outside. I don't know. But that is, we are where we are at this point. I think I do not think this is over. I think there is still Elizabeth Warren holds a lot of power right now. Yeah. I think in terms of being able to change the narrative, we shall see how she uses it. I think this is a really monumental point in the progressive movement and in her, career and whatnot.
Saving capitalist democracy and whatnot. No big deal.
We'll see.
I'm afraid she will continue to make the poor decisions, which is unfortunate.
Me too.
Because I think that she could go down, in history right now, or at least within the Sanders presidency, as someone with a lot of power in the Senate, as someone who can make or break certain laws coming into power. If Elizabeth Warren puts something in front of President Sanders, we know he's going to sign it. We know she has that kind of power. We know that is a dynamic that she could create. With Biden, not so much.
Highly unlikely. Yeah. Folks, Capterra, just a reminder, is the free online resource millions use monthly to find the best software solutions for their team, for their business, whatever it is. You can search through 700 specific categories of software, 700 different businesses. I know, I'm blown away by that. It's crazy. I had no idea. I thought there was basically two things as a kid that you could do to make a living: lawyer or car salesman.
I mostly thought of all the things Biden listed in his speech tonight.
That's right. Electrician,
firefighter,
exactly.
Pipe fitter.
But at Capterra, they get 700 specific categories of software. You can check it out. Over 1 million reviews of those very same products. So not only do you get ideas as to what solutions for your business, you get ideas as to what's the best version of that solution Visit Capterra.com/majority for free today. Find the software tools you need for your business. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA.com/majority. Capterra, software selection simplified. So, folks, there'll be right behind this one, there'll be another podcast for you, brief. I don't know, just a little bit of an update. We'll be back live on Thursday, and we shall see. Isn't there like some type of Chinese proverb about living in interesting times? You know what I would prefer?
Curse and
not
curse,
to.
right?
Right.
Oh, wait,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
what? Everything under heaven is in utter chaos. The situation is excellent.
Is that some type of like?
That's Mao.
Mao, yeah.
Oh, is that right?
There's chaos under heaven. The situation is perfect.
Hang in there, folks. Alex Pareene, thank you so much, folks. Check out the New Republic and
Our new podcast, The Politics of Everything.
Politics of Everything. I was going to say everything's political.
That was the original name, but we've turned it around.
That's a smarter way of doing it. And of course, Brandon Sutton, Discourse.
The discourse, yes.
And Alex Pareene on Twitter.
Just at Pareene.
At Pareene. Okay. Good for you. And
At Pretty Bad Lefty.
Pretty Bad Lefty. Folks, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught.